Welcome back to the Daily Bread Bible Study. We are looking at day number 9 for Thursday, January 9th, 2020, looking at Genesis chapter 29 through 31. We see Jacob again is blessed by God and received the firstborn blessing and is on his way because his mother Rebekah sent him to where she came from to find a wife. So Jacob finally makes it to the land and he meets Rachel by the well. He is infatuated with Rachel and is welcomed by Laban, who is his mother Rebekah's brother, so his uncle Laban. And Laban receives him as, "This is my bone and my flesh," which is funny because Laban and Jacob are similar in some ways. Laban is very similar to Rebekah, Jacob's mom, because we see that Rebekah was the one who was scheming. And here, Bethuel, both Rebekah and Laban's father, is not the main character in this story. I presume he is not around, but we don't know that for sure. Anyways, so Laban is the main character. He is the one whom Jacob's going to be dealing with because he's infatuated with Rachel. Laban permits Jacob to work 7 years in order to marry Rachel, to pay off the debt for marrying his second oldest daughter. Laban has a daughter as well. Her name is Leah. That's the firstborn daughter. The secondborn daughter is named Rachel. And so Jacob agrees to the terms of working for 7 years to be able to have Rachel as his wife. And so in Genesis 29, verse 20, it says, "So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him as a few days because of the love he had for her." I'm going to stop a moment and just say how beautiful that is. To be able to find somebody that you are fascinated with and to have that love, and time just passes quickly when you're in the presence of that loved one. It's a beautiful thing. It's a gift to be able to celebrate, and any of you who are lucky to be able to have that love, as I am lucky in my life to have that too with my wife Amanda, but any of you who are lucky to be able to have that time pass quickly and to be able to enjoy that time with your significant other, may you be able to cherish that every day of your life and keep that even in the challenging times and the difficult times of your life as well. So I thought that would be a personal note to take at this moment. But getting back to the text, let's focus on Jacob and Laban. Now Laban, after 7 years, decides to throw a feast. And Jacob is ready to party, eagerly awaiting his life with Rachel. Jacob, I imagine he has some wine. He celebrates heartily because this day he's been looking forward to comes. And then he consummates the marriage, only to find in Genesis 29:25, when morning came, behold, it was Leah. Now this might sound kind of silly. I think it's great in the text. There is a lot of drama in this particular instance. Jacob just celebrating his time, working 7 years to be there and get his true love in Rachel, his beloved of his eye, the apple of his eye, and to be able to celebrate marriage. And he wakes up in the morning only to find Rachel is not there. And her sister Leah is there. And as he, probably has a pretty bad recollection of the past night and past couple hours, he's trying to piece it all together. He learns that Laban has tricked him into marrying Leah, and then talks with Laban, and Laban claims that in their society and culture that the firstborn daughter must be married before the secondborn daughter could be allowed to be taken as a wife. So furious, but yet still in love with Rachel, Jacob enlists for the same price 7 more years of work. But fortunately, after a week, he's able to celebrate life and marriage with Rachel. But he has to pay off that debt to Laban for 7 years. So in this time, he's not accumulating any of the resources himself. He's just working for his father-in-law, Laban, his uncle Laban. At the end of chapter 29 and most of chapter 30, we see the dealings around the envy of these 2 wives having to be with Jacob and share that. And there's some tension. It becomes a competition of sorts to provide some offspring between Leah and Rachel. And through this competition and the strange exchange of mandrakes that's mentioned there in chapter 30, each of the wives is able to produce 6 sons, and creating the 12 sons of Jacob. These will become the 12 tribes of Israel, with some, connection for Joseph's 2 sons, which are going to inherit a portion of that. But anyways, these are the beginnings of the 12 tribes that will be called the Israelites. Jacob still doesn't have any possessions again, and Jacob spent many years of effort only to see Laban's wealth grow. And Jacob wants Laban to let him go so he can start his life and grow his wealth as well. But Laban tries to coerce and tempt Jacob into staying by claiming that, the Lord has blessed me because of you, trying to use guilt. That I want you to stick around because of your blessing to me. So Laban offers to Jacob a proposition. You could become a partner, and you get all the certain colored animals. Through what can be only described as this kind of like ancient voodoo selective breeding techniques, Jacob creates a stronger flock than Laban. There is the Jacob sheep in our day and time, which this Jacob sheep, from what I've heard on Google, and heard a little bit through one of our members of the congregation. I'm looking at you, Bernie, specifically, thinking about all that you taught me about the sheep and how sheep act. And our church is called Shepherd King after all, so we have an interest in sheep. But I did not know that there is a specific line of sheep that's called the Jacob sheep. And so these Jacob sheep are tied back to Jacob when he was there being a herdsman for his uncle Laban. And so Jacob creates the stronger flock of sheep. I don't know if they're the Jacob sheep in specific, but that's kind of what the tradition says. So Jacob creates in the story the Jacob sheep, and they are stronger than Laban's flock. We pick up in chapter 31 that Laban is getting displeased with that. He's seeing that Jacob's hand is thriving and his flock is dwindling. They're weaker and not as successful. And so he's feeling resentment for a deal that has gone south. He's gotten so much out of Jacob these past 20 years, but he feels like he should be prospering from this. Jacob sees that this resentment is growing, and he said, I've had enough. And he decides to flee from Laban and flee from having to really explain all of his own kind of scheming to get the sheep the way that he wants them as well too. So Laban pursues Jacob because Jacob's running a big herd of sheep and family and all of his descendants, and so they're not going very quickly. Laban is able to catch up with him with his small group of his people that he brings to catch him, and they have a confrontation in chapter 31. Laban, before he confronts Jacob, is warned in a dream by God not to harm Jacob, which goes back to the blessing from Isaac, bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. And so Laban makes a covenant with Jacob before they go their separate ways. So after 20 years of sticking around with his uncle Laban, after getting cheated out of things, he, in fact, still is able to prosper as they go their separate ways. So that is the end of chapter 31, and we will pick it up in chapter 32 tomorrow with our next section. So if you have any questions or know anything more about these sheep, please give me a call. Help me understand more, connect with me through social media or whatever mediums that we have. I'd love to hear more, and thank you so much for joining me for day number 9 of the Daily Bread podcast.